I'm State Assemblymember Ash Kalra, and I want to welcome everyone to Green Foothills Virtual Earth Day, of course, in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. It took us a couple minutes to get started here because we're having a great response of folks signing in. Wanted to make sure that we had as many people on as possible before we got started. And so just so you know, we have a great lineup of speakers, entertainment today. And if you do have questions, there will be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end of the speaker program. And we also want to really thank all of you for being here. You know, this is a very unusual time for all of us. But at the same time, in this crisis that we're in, when we look up at the skies and we see the world around us, it's in some ways as beautiful physically as it's been in a long time, with the air being as clear and clean as I've seen certainly in decades. And we're seeing wildlife emerge in places where we haven't seen it in quite some time. And I think that it really shows how interconnected we are with nature and with our planet. And most specifically, how interconnected our green movement is, and the need that we have, the need we have for community advocacy to ensure that even as we get past this point of crisis that we're in, that we can ensure that we continue to move forward to protect our earth and in turn protect ourselves. And I think the world around us right now is a reminder of what can be, what the possibilities are when we do everything we can to protect Mother Earth. And so again, so excited to have everyone here and to hear from some great folks today, great speakers. And we are going to start off with some entertainment. And I'm very excited to have the opportunity to introduce Chris Reed, who is the lead singer of the California rock reggae project, Sunny State, and is the CEO and Director of Programming and Education for Modern Minded and Arts Initiative. Between European and South American tours, Chris has been passionately starting sustainable band, theater, and performing arts programs since 2006. In that time, he's taught more than 50,000 students across California how to proudly nurture their artistic talents. Chris is a father of 2 daughters, a husband, and an activist that's been recognized by international radio stations and networks like MTV as he uses music to fight for positive change. So everyone, Chris Reed.
Thank you so much. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway, and I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of diamond deserts, while all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. When the sun comes shining and I was strolling, wheat fields waving, oh, the dust clouds rolling, a voice was chanting as the fire was lifting. Yeah. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the other side it said no trespassing. But on the other side it didn't say nothing, no. That side was made for you and me. In the squares of the city, in the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, yeah, I see my people as they stood there hungry. I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Cause nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can make me turn back. This land is made for you and me. This land is your land. Oh, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. Oh yes, I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. And I find hope in the way that you live your life, hope in the way you treat people right, hope in the gifts and talents you share, the way you don't worry, living without fear. I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. Oh yes, I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. Because of your love and touch, because of your smiling embrace, because of your love in me, it's cause of you, don't you see that I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. Oh yes, I've got hope, I've got hope, I've got hope. And that it's all gonna be alright, 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 alright. And it's all gonna be just fine, so fine, so fine. And it's all, and it's all, and it's all gonna be alright, 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 alright. And it's all, and it's all, and it's all gonna be just fine. Cause I've got hope, hope, I've got hope, hope, I've got hope, 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 I've got hope, hope, I've got hope, hope, I've got hope. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Happy birthday.
Well, that was incredible, Chris. Thank you. I think what a great way to start off the program. Every movement needs art, needs music, needs song to motivate it and inspire it. And Chris, thank you for starting off this program by inspiring us with your beautiful music and your beautiful voice. We appreciate you. And so we have a wonderful program ahead of speakers. We are still waiting for a couple of very special guests that we're trying to get on. And so we'll get to them when they arrive. And so at this time, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of Green Foothills, Megan Fluke. And Megan joined Green Foothills as the Executive Director in November 2013. She is a community organizer at heart and fiercely believes in the power of people and grassroots action. I've personally known Megan, I think probably 12 years or more now in the fight to save Coyote Valley, which has been a long journey, but I couldn't imagine a better partner to fight for the justice when it comes to preserving Coyote Valley and so many other issues of justice, both environmental and otherwise. So everyone, Megan, please, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Green Foothills?
Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Chris. It's quite something to go right after him. I'm a little bit, I got goosebumps. I saw so many comments and I see just so much love and happiness. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Chris. Hey, everybody, and happy 50th Earth Day. Thank you for being a part of this celebration and this really special moment in history. Today, I'd like to talk about the power of community. Community, it's not about just physical proximity. It's about coming together for one another, to talk, to support one another, and to share in the work ahead. And we're all still doing this right now. It was almost 60 years ago that a community of 33 people came together to form the group that became Green Foothills. Out of a living room conversation came the organization that, with our partners and with community, has protected nearly 200,000 acres of open space, natural resources, and farmland in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. And this is all through advocacy, education, and grassroots action. Together, we are creating a climate resilient region that other communities can model both today and into the future and decades to come. This is a region where wildlife thrive, where everybody has natural beauty to enjoy, and where communities live in balance with nature. And our work is continuing during the shutdown because our work is about joining together to carry the message that nature is essential. Even if many of our parks are closed right now, they are still protecting us. Our forests are still cleaning our air and our water. Our wetlands are still protecting us against sea level rise, and our local farms are still feeding us. Today, you are going to hear more about 3 campaigns to protect local nature. The people who are speaking today are among the most wonderful local leaders because they are here for both the planet and our community, and they're making an impact every day. And you know, what's more, the reason we selected them is because they bring a love and a joy to their work that makes all of the difference and really should be a model to us all. So your call to action is to pick one of these campaigns to take action on. You can learn more about these issues on Green Foothills website, greenfoothills.org. Sign the petitions and spread the word on social media. We ask you to learn as much as you can about one of these issues. Because you are on today's call, you are now a part of the Green Foothills community. And you'll be the first to know if there's a rally or a community meeting, though they'll probably be virtual for a little bit longer, and also be the first to know about any elected officials you might be able to call to further the campaign. I have to give a shout out as the executive director to the 1,050 families and individuals who donated to Green Foothills in the past year. If you have made a donation to Green Foothills work, thank you. It would not be possible without our supporters. And if you haven't donated to us yet, make a gift that's meaningful to you to Green Foothills, be it $5, $50, $500. We would not be able to continue our work without your support. So thank you for that. I think it's clear, you know, there's more work to do, and now is the time for us to be coming together for a better tomorrow, despite this crazy time that we're living in. And I have an excerpt that I'd like to share. It was written just about a month ago by Gurpreet Gill, and it's brought me a great deal of calm in this new reality as and I know we all are juggling this, just anxiety and loneliness and this sort of unknown of what's going to come in the next few months. So I hope that these words help you too. What if? What if there is an intelligence far greater than humans at work? What if this period somehow helps us reset and remember what is truly important? Reconnecting with family and community, reducing travel so that the environment, the skies, the air, our lungs all get a break. To reconnect with self. What is really important to me? A reset economically. The working poor, the lack of healthcare access for over 30 million Americans, the need for paid sick leave. How hard does one need to work to be able to live, to have a life outside of work? There is a shift underway in our society. What if the virus is an ally in our evolution? In remembrance of what it means to be connected, humane, living a simpler life, to be less impactful, more kind to our environment. It was time for change. We all knew that, and change has arrived. I share these words in hope of both peace and of action. We need to create and sustain a fundamental shift in our society to ensure a livable planet for all. Shifting back to normal is not an option. As Greta Thunberg said, normal was crisis. Everybody can make a difference. As Pete McCloskey tells us in his new book, The Story of the First Earth Day, it was grassroots action that changed the world over the past 50 years. And it's going to be grassroots action that continues to change the world. And together we're making this possible. Let's create a world that our children deserve. I want everybody to depart today's celebration with a resolution to just pick one plot of land. Maybe it's one of the campaigns that we're talking about, maybe another piece of land, but one natural plot of land, no matter how big or small, that you are absolutely committed to doing all that you can to protect that for the next generation. This is one of the greatest gifts we can give to them. So thank you for your support. Thank you for all that you do, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you so much, Megan. I think Green Foothills and all of us in the movement are lucky to have you as part of it and as a leader in it. And as you said, the interconnectedness is really key at this point, to realize that no matter what aspect of the movement you're in, environmental, racial justice, economic justice, that it's all connected. And we're seeing that now more than ever. We now have the pleasure, and I have the great honor of introducing a couple of people. I see them on the Zoom. Hopefully their audio is working, so we're going to give it a shot here. We have with us one of the co-founders of Earth Day that Megan just referred to, Congressman Pete McCloskey and his wife, Helen McCloskey, who are both extraordinary activists. And so a little bit about both of them. Former Congressman Pete McCloskey has a tremendous history with Green Foothills that goes back to the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center power line battle. He was also the 2010 Nature's Inspiration honoree. McCloskey served from 1967 until 1983 in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing the San Francisco Bay Area Peninsula and Silicon Valley. An ardent environmentalist, he was co-chair of the first Earth Day in 1970 with Senator Gaylord Nelson, and co-authored the 1973 Endangered Species Act. After serving in Congress, McCloskey returned to private practice. He was appointed by President George H.W. Bush and elected as first chairman on the U.S. Commission on National and Community Service, and served from 1990 to 1992 in that capacity. He is joined by his wife, Helen McCloskey, who is a past president of the Palo Alto Humane Society and a longtime animal and wilderness advocate, helping get wild and scenic river status for the river that runs through their farm, and working with many others to establish the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument. Pete and Helen McCloskey reside in Yolo County, where of course they run an organic farm. So everyone, please let's welcome Helen and Pete McCloskey.
Hi, you guys. We're having a little trouble at our end. Our internet is barely above dial-up up here, so bear with us. We are hardly hearing you guys at all. Can you hear us?
Yes, it's a little fuzzy, but we can absolutely hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to put Pete on, and he'll say what he's going to say. Here, Pete.
I don't know whether you can hear me or not, but
I can hear you.
50 years ago, 20 million people turned out on April 22nd to protest that the Congress wasn't doing anything about the environment. Now, 50 years later, it's even worse. We've got an administration that would undo everything that was done after Earth Day 50 years ago. And we can't celebrate it because we can't see each other very much except over the phone, except Earth Day, instead of being April 22nd, I'd like you to consider that it'll be November 3rd, 2020, and the meaning of Earth Day, if we can do what they did 50 years ago, is we'll turn out a few people to vote, and we'll knock out a few Republican senators who don't believe that global warming is real. As I say this to you, our two congresswomen, Anna Eshoo and Jackie Spear, are on their way back to Washington to vote on the virus bill to raise money to get people through this problem. But as I say, my message is not from 50 years ago. It's for what happens in October 2020, and you have your choice. We have 3 Senate races, one in Colorado, one in Utah, one in Arizona that are very, very close. And if we want to keep Jackie and Anna effective and getting the job done, we've got to get rid of those 3 Republican senators in those states. So let's all count on going to either Colorado or Utah or Montana or Arizona and work for the Democratic candidates who will give our congresswomen the backup they'll need to get environmental issues back on the track. And it was my privilege to be part of Earth Day 50 years ago, but it wasn't so much Earth Day. It was the young kids that went out under Dennis Hayes' leadership, former student body Stanford president. He'd been student body president in 1968 at Stanford when the kids learned that we were doing research on atomic weapons, and led an effort at Stanford to stop that research, and the Board of Trustees finally agreed to stop all classified research. Dennis then went on and they named 12 members of the House, my colleagues, a dirty dozen, and they said, we're going to defeat these people. We're going to turn out voters on Election Day of 1970. And my God, they did it. They knocked out 7 of the 12, and when Congress convened in January of 71, suddenly 2/3 of the Republicans in the House and Senate, and more than that in the Democrats, said, we're now environmentalists. And as a result of what those kids did, because of Earth Day, the world changed. And for 10 years, we passed wonderful legislation, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act. And those, of course, those acts are the very targets of the Trump administration right now. At the top of the list, they have the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act. So this Earth Day, 50 years later, the task is quite clear, and it is what we do next October to turn out the vote in these states and re-elect people who favor the fact that global warming is not a hoax. It's my pleasure to be with you. I've talked too long, and the woman sitting beside me is much more passionate than I am. She believes that the human race is the worst species on Earth, and that animals and birds and their habitat rate way ahead of mankind building more golf courses or hotels. In any event, happy birthday, everybody.
Yes, Helen, do you have any some words for us?
We heard that.
Say that again.
Yeah, you have some words for us, Helen, as well, to add to Pete?
Oh, just to get out and vote in November, and as Pete said, to really treat the elections as Earth Day, because there's a lot of unhappiness among certain people. I know some of the Biden supporters are very unhappy, and I totally understand that, but elections are not marriages. You're not looking for someone perfect. You're basically looking for the bus that's going to get you closer to your destination. And
anybody but Trump.
Anybody but Trump, and there's no question that there's all kinds of issues in both parties, but there's also no question that the Democratic Party, and by the way, I'm not a Democrat, so I don't have a vested interest in this, but it's quite clear that the Democrats have a much more favorable agenda towards science, towards global warming, and towards wilderness and wildlife and public lands and the protection of those public lands. And so it's just clear that Republicans have to go. And if we don't win the U.S. Senate, we might as well not win the White House. So please get involved in $5, monthly to a candidate in Arizona or trying to get Mitch McConnell out, and just pick some races, get super involved, and put your arm against, the forces that be, and really push, because we've got to win in November. We just absolutely have to.
Colorado and Montana and Arizona are nice places to be next fall. But that's the message of this Earth Day. We can't celebrate it April 22nd. We move it ahead to November 3rd, and the election's up there. And the same people that have formed the Committee for Green Foothills for the last 50 years started it in the early 60s. We were privileged to have the Bay Area's finest place to live, a little basin where Stanford is located. 10 miles south, it's 10 degrees hotter. 10 miles north, it's 10 degrees colder. But right there, where the Committee for Green Foothills is the last beautiful foothills in America. And you might think of the Stanford alma mater, which it's a wonderful song, where the rolling foothills rise up towards mountain higher.
He's going to cry. He's going to cry.
Well, Friday. Where at eve the coast range lies in the sunset fire, flushing deep and hailing, now we raise our voices hailing thee our alma mater.
Oh my God, he's calling.
That's Stanford. You know, right out of Stanford came Dennis Hayes and Gaylord Nelson, who graduated from San Jose State. Gaylord graduated at a time when the Sacramento Center of the Santa Clara Valley was one of the most beautiful places in the world. So years later, he's in the Senate, and to save what was Santa Clara Valley as he knew it, we thought it was Silicon Valley, he introduced his Earth Day to the world, and now it's celebrated in, 184 nations, except in the White House right now, and in the Senate of the United States. So if we're going to preserve the green foothills now, we work in this next election. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Quite inspirational. It's quite telling to see Congressman McCloskey get so emotional about it. 50 years later, we need that emotion and that love in our elected leaders today, more of it, certainly. And Congressman and Helen McCloskey, thank you both so much. You are both truly inspirational. And as you mentioned, Congressman, the youth and the kids, the students, we're going to hear from some of those students that are carrying on your legacy. And although it seems like we're in a more difficult place now, the reality is we've accomplished so much because of what you did 50 years ago over the last 5 decades, and we have a lot more work to do. But you inspire us. Everybody go get Congressman McCloskey's book and get further inspiration. And let's be part of this ongoing movement that was started 50 years ago. So thank you so much, Congressman and Helen McCloskey. I now have the honor of introducing our next speaker. That's Val Lopez, the chairman of the Amah Mutsun tribal band of Indians. The Amah Mutsun are comprised of the descendants of Mission San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. The traditional tribal territory of the Amah Mutsun extends north into the Coyote Valley, which has many culturally important sites. Both the Amah Mutsun and the Muwekma tribe share responsibility for the protection of these lands. And I had the great honor earlier this year of being able to, a few months ago, to honor Val Lopez with one of our Assembly District 27 Native American Heritage Month honors, and he certainly deserves that honor. And so I would like to welcome Valentin Lopez to talk a little bit more about his movement. Thank you, Val.
Thank you very much, Member Kalra, and I also want to thank Megan and the Committee for Green Foothills for all the work they've done all these years. They do magnificent work, not only preserving lands in our traditional territory as well as the Muwekma traditional territory, and so that's truly appreciated by tribes. And I want to thank those who are attending this event, and thank you for your participation and advocacy. Again, my name is Valentin Lopez, and I'm the chairman of the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band. Our tribe is comprised of the descendants of the indigenous peoples that were taken to Mission San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz, here along the coast of Central California. Our tribe was violently colonized by through three different periods of colonization. The Spanish and Mission period, the Mexican period, and then the American California period. And all three of those times, they wanted to destroy our culture, our spirituality, our environments, and our humanity. And the sad thing is that destruction and domination never ended. It continues through today. And the way it's showing itself now is they want to destroy the most sacred site of the Amah Mutsun tribal band. Our most sacred site is known to us as Urastock. That translates to the place of the big head. And our big head dances were our most important and highest form of ceremonies were held there. And we did that for thousands of years, 10, 12,000 years, perhaps more, 800, 900, 1,000 generations and more. And now, and our spirituality and culture has never been respected or appreciated. They wanted to just wipe it out. And then they pass all these laws that allow the destruction of our lands. When you come to our territory and you say, where are your sites? They're under freeways, they're under houses, under development. They're ag lands. I've been to ag lands where they were disking the property and they call us out there to pick up the fragments of the relatives of our ancestors. That's a horrible feeling, going through fields and just picking out small flakes of bone so we can rebury them. And that's the way they treat our ancestors and our tribe today. We are not a federally recognized tribe. If they were to destroy, whenever governments destroy cultural sites and spiritual sites, that's recognized in most other countries as a crime against humanity. But because here in the United States, they've developed these land use laws that require consultation with tribes, they say that's good enough. But whenever all that is a check the box process and says, yes, we consulted with the tribe, and that's it. There's no, and then they go right through with the development. At Eurostock, they wanted to do sand and gravel mining on 4 of our most sacred mountains where the ceremonies were held. And we're asking the public to stand with us because we are federally unrecognized tribes. There are no laws that will protect that will protect our culture or our spirituality. And therefore we have to rely on the public to say enough is enough. We must stop the destruction of Native American cultures and lands and tribes and peoples. So what we're asking people to do is we have a website at protecturistac.org. Uristac is spelled Juristac, and then go there and then sign our petition and pass our petition on to others. And then we also ask them to send letters to the county. And then at the end of the summer, the draft EIR is going to come out. And when it does, be aware of that and please read it over and respond to it and tell them enough destruction of Native American tribal lands, stop. And then the other thing is they need to recognize the importance of tribes. Our vision for Uristac is that the petition is denied and then the developers sell it to conservation organizations that will work with our tribe to allow our tribe to return to those lands, to restore traditional stewardship, to take care of the animals, the plants, the wildlife, etc. And that's our goal. We'd like to have Uristac be a tribal park for the benefit of education of our members, but also for the benefit of the public, to talk about our history and our culture and our spirituality and how we developed those sacred relationships with Mother Earth and with Creator. So we hope that you'll go to our website and support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Val. The work you're doing is incredible. The education that you're doing is quite incredible for our community. A week after I got elected in the Assembly, I went to Standing Rock and to support the water protectors, to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline. And a lot of people were interested in that movement all over the world, including right here in California, in the Bay Area. Well, the way we honor that movement is by protecting all indigenous lands, especially indigenous lands that are in our own backyard. And so thank you for raising attention to this issue. It's part of the broader movement of protecting the indigenous communities that have been disrespected and disregarded during since the inception of this nation. And it's time for us to really stand together, united again with that interconnectedness. And so I appreciate you, Val. And I now have the great opportunity to, as we were talking about the youth, and I know Congressman McCloskey was talking about things he did when he was younger and working with students, what have you. I have the opportunity now to introduce members of the Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strike. And These are three young women who are out on the streets. They're raising their voice in a way that's been so effective and powerful. We have with us Lexi Crilly, Helen Deng, and Jamie Minden, who are the co-leads of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strike. I'll introduce all of them, and then they can go ahead one by one and say a few words about today's Earth Day event. Lexi is a senior at Los Altos High School and is excited to attend the University of Michigan next year. She's also the creative lead of California Youth Climate Strike, as well as the founder and president of the Los Altos Youth Climate Action Team. After that, we'll hear from Helen Deng, who's a junior at Archbishop Mitty High School, who's a leader of her school green team and an active member of the Sunrise Movement, believing strongly in advocating for climate justice and a livable future. And finally, we'll hear from Jamie Minden, who is an active member of the Sunrise Movement, a teen conservation leader at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and a junior at St. Francis High School, where she is the Environmental Club's president. She's worked on a variety of causes, successfully advocating for environmental changes in local city council as the student lead of the Mountain View Climate Action Team. So go ahead, Lexi.
Thank you so much. Coyote Valley holds tremendous ecological value, as it hosts a phenomenal biodiversity and serves as the only connection for life between the Santa Cruz and Diablo mountain ranges. Unfortunately, large portions of Coyote Valley are at high risk for industrial development. Imagine the rolling golden hills leveled out and spun over. Imagine the trees and grasses mutilated and pushed aside to make room for buildings and roads, a grayscape of civilization. The destruction of Coyote Valley would be an absolute tragedy. The addition of industrial or residential areas would drastically increase carbon emissions, as well as destroying thousands of acres of a stunning natural habitat. In its natural state, the land has a large potential for carbon absorption, and if it were cemented over, pollution levels in the Bay Area would increase dramatically. It would contribute to the overall worsening of the climate crisis. In so many cases, debates like these are framed as the tree huggers versus the progress-driven industrialists. In so many cases, the battle has been lost before it's even begun. No one stands a chance against the fossil fuel giants. The power of human greed is perhaps the strongest forces in the universe. But the tide is changing along with the climate. We have less than a decade left to fix everything if we want a future for our planet. Many people are finally beginning to understand the sense of urgency. The climate justice movement is growing, and with it, hope is blossoming. I have dedicated myself to environmental action because I love this beautiful planet we call home. I wake up every morning terrified of what the future may hold if we don't take action immediately. But I earnestly believe that if we do act now, it will be possible to save our planet for generations to come.
Thank you, Lexi. Now, Helen Deng.
Hi, everyone. There's a caveat to that, what Lexi just said, however. Hope is important, hope keeps us all sane, but the fact is there's no time to waste. And as youth climate strikers, we've decided that we are compelled to act because the climate crisis is an emergency and it didn't happen by accident. I spend a lot of my days as an organizer wavering between two sides of the same coin. Passion involves both empowerment and outrage. When 100 companies are responsible for 71% of emissions, something's wrong. We're locked into a system where the truth is, no matter how vegan we are, no matter how many eco-friendly products we use, no matter how many of us pledge to never fly in a plane again, we are still absolutely hurtling towards a path of near certain climate destruction. Climate despair is all too real. Feeling hopeless is all too familiar. But what keeps me grounded in environmental work is the mantra that the worst thing we can do is nothing. We absolutely have to keep fighting. And the rage that accompanies our generation's feelings about the climate crisis, it's righteous anger because we've inherited a future that is spiraling into crisis before we've even had a chance at childhood. It's righteous anger because top investment firms currently reap billions from deforestation, eliminating precious ecosystems and the lives of indigenous peoples, all of which is of immeasurable value. It's righteous anger because fossil fuel companies have spent millions on a campaign of orchestrated climate denial, sowing misinformation for decades, knowing the projected climate crisis, purposefully injecting lies as seeps into the public consciousness and remain today. We must use this negative yet electrifying anger to power the positivity in this movement and take collective action. This matters because so much is at stake. Our beautiful world, natural landscapes, the people we love, everything we hold dear. And my anger at the coming climate chaos ripping all that we love out of our hands, as I'm in my teens, is the very thing that fuels our movement, and we're a million strong. When there's so much goodness to lose, but also so much goodness to gain, we cannot afford to remain complacent, and we must keep fighting for a better world. Our all-encompassing outrage is and must be coupled with our immense capacity for love, empathy, and compassion. We care about the earth, we care about natural lands, we care about the ecosystems that sustain abundant natural life. We care about each other above all. Our anger must tell the institutions profiting off of destroying our chance at living our lives and enjoying the beauty around us. It must tell them that this is not okay. And what we're going to keep doing is keep organizing and striking, and more powerfully than ever before, with more people than ever before. To save our world, there's so much work to be done. We must take up the mantle of the first Earth Day protests back in 1970, but even bigger than before, because there's no time left. And we must use the grassroots momentum of public outrage and ultimately love in our efforts to save the futures that are at stake.
Thank you so much, Helen. Jamie?
Hi. We only have 10 years left to transform our entire society to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions so that my generation can have a livable future. We don't have much time left, and we needed to act yesterday. But our movement has the power to deliver the change that is needed. Civil resistance studies have discovered that if just 3.5% of a population takes part in repeated nonviolent protest, that movement becomes unstoppable. People who have never taken action before are taking to the streets. Our movement is spreading. Our movement is steadily becoming unstoppable. I find a lot of hope in the work that land conservation groups are doing. Land protection offers hope and opportunity for future healing for our planet and for our people. That's why we at Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strikes are proud to join the Coyote Valley Coalition, because we are stronger together. You know what also brings me hope? The Green New Deal, a government pledge to stop the climate crisis through a 10-year nationwide job mobilization. Transitioning the systems and services of this country to protect the people and the planet is possible, and it will take a lot of work, creating millions of jobs and uplifting the economy. The Green New Deal will require a just transition for all, ushering in workers' rights policies like a fair living wage, and welcoming people of all races, nationalities, and economic backgrounds. If enacted, the Green New Deal would be the economic stimulus our country needs right now to bring us out of the economic problems caused by the coronavirus. Hope is a greater motivator than fear or outrage. Hope sustains us and makes us whole again. That's why Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strikes is announcing a nationwide art competition with the prompt, Envision the Future with the Green New Deal, to ignite the fire of hope under our nation. To turn in submissions of art, poetry, songs, storytelling, and dance, or just to learn more about the Green New Deal, go to bit.ly/Green New Deal Hope. I think they're dropping it in the chat. Or you can visit our Instagram at SV Climate Strike or our website, www.svyouthclimatestrike.org. Join the movement. It's time to fight for our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lexi, Helen, and Jamie. You're incredible. Thanks for plugging or doing the movement on the Green New Deal. I'm honored to be a joint author of the California Green New Deal, and I know that we have a lot of work to do in California, let alone throughout the nation. And as I've said pretty regularly, the youth are going to save us, but they're only going to save us if we give them the tools and the support and hand to them policies that are ready to go that they can then execute. And so the power of the youth taking to the streets, showing up in city council chambers, board of supervisors, that's state capitol buildings is incredibly important. And we need to listen to the youth, because the decisions we're making, they're going to be the ones that are going to be living with it for many, many years to come. And so I'm very grateful to the three of you. And as mentioned, check out the chat box. A lot of the links to the different movements and different initiatives are being put in the chat box. And also something I should have mentioned earlier, I'm going to mention to you now, in the chat box, feel free to let us know what Earth Day means to you. At any point, just tell us what Earth Day means to you. If anything that you're hearing is motivating you, also mention our speakers, because they've all been amazing so far. And we now have up next another incredible advocate, the advocacy director for Green Foothills, Alice Kaufman. And Alice holds a law degree from the University of California, Hastings, and previously practiced environmental law with the Environmental Law Foundation in Oakland before joining Green Foothills In 2012, as Legislative Advocacy Director, Alice oversees all advocacy campaigns. She lives in Redwood City and is a founding member of Redwood City Neighbors United, a community organization dedicated to protecting the Cargill salt ponds. I've had the pleasure of working with Alice for many, many years on a number of different environmental initiatives, and really appreciate you, Alice. So let's hear from Alice Kaufman.
Well, hi, thanks so much, Ash, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's just so inspiring to hear from everyone, all of our wonderful speakers, and to just gather here on this beautiful day. I'm happy to see those of you who are able to be outside during this time. I'm planning on going outside when we're done with this, so I can just enjoy the nature that we have for us. So as Ash said, I'm the Legislative Advocacy Director with Green Foothills, and what I wanted to talk to you about today is one of our major campaigns having to do with protecting the Cargill salt ponds in Redwood City from development. So I want to give you a bit of history first. Not everybody knows that San Francisco Bay used to be ringed with tidal marshes, and these marshes were filled with waterfowl, shorebirds, fish, and other wildlife. But decades ago, most of these wetlands were drained and diked off for salt production. And then many of them were filled with dirt and turned into residential and industrial development. That's how we got some of our cities like Foster City and Redwood Shores. And as a result of this, altogether the Bay has lost about 90% of its historic wetlands, and this has had a serious impact on water quality and wildlife habitat in San Francisco Bay. Some of the species that used to be common here are now endangered. And in an era of climate change, the loss of our wetlands means that our communities have very little protection against sea level rise. Healthy wetlands absorb storm surges and protect against flooding from sea level rise. And it is worth noting that today the areas that are most at risk from sea level rise are those where former wetlands were filled in for development. So about 20 years ago, many of the salt ponds that hadn't been developed were acquired by the federal government to be restored to wetlands. That's what is now the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. But the Cargill salt ponds in Redwood City were not part of that deal. However, they still can be restored like the others were. But unfortunately, Cargill seems to want to follow the playbook of the 1950s and put urban development there instead. A decade ago, they proposed building a city of 30,000 people on the salt ponds, but overwhelming opposition from residents and environmental groups forced them to withdraw the proposal. But then last year, the Trump administration announced that they were giving up federal Clean Water Act jurisdiction over the Redwood City salt ponds. And immediately, Cargill put out a press release announcing that they were going to come up with a new development proposal. So I'm going to show you a quick video clip that I took in April of last year. This is showing you the Cargill salt ponds. This is from the top of Bedwell Bayfront Park. And you can see they're completely covered with water. This is what the salt ponds look like for much of the year. They essentially form a shallow water tidal flat that provides habitat for migratory waterfowl and shorebirds. This is the site where Cargill wants to put homes and businesses. Doesn't seem like a great idea. As is clear from that video, this is not a good place for development. It's part of the bay. And if it were filled in for development, it would be right in the path of sea level rise. Furthermore, it's right across the street from heavy industries like rock crushers and metal recyclers, not a good place for people to live. There are plenty of other places where we can build housing, places that don't have all of those problems, but there's nowhere else where we can restore 1,400 acres to wetlands. And we need every acre of restorable wetlands, both to protect our communities and for the health of the bay. So what are we doing about this? At Green Foothills, we are working hard to protect the Cargill salt ponds against development and to get them restored to wetlands. Together with several other environmental groups, we filed suit against the Trump administration last year over their Clean Water Act decision. And we are working with the Redwood City community to make sure that the Redwood City Council knows that nobody wants this area to be developed. So this is something that we can all do. As Megan says, we can all pick something that we want to work on, whether it's in our backyards, whether it's in DC, we can all take action as long as we're coming together and we believe in the power of community. And when I think about what gives me hope for the future, it's this power of community. Young and old, everyone who's here, everyone who's listening, we all can come together as a community. There's a quote from Margaret Mead that I always refer to when I'm talking to people about becoming an advocate for what you believe in. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining with us, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for your advocacy over the years. And, you know, we have some time for some questions, and I have a few already in fact, I'm going to start off with you, Alice, since we have you just finishing some of your comments regarding your advocacy role for Green Foothills. How have you, or how has the organization adapted in light of this shelter at home that we've been in longer than anyone else in the nation?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we are still doing our advocacy during this time. There's obviously our elected leaders are really taken up with responding to the COVID-19 crisis, as they should be, but that doesn't mean that we're no longer fighting for the work that we're doing. We're still following processes. There's a lot of staff for cities and counties and other areas who are still working on all of the environmental initiatives that we champion during normal times. So it's, you know, these are challenging times, and it's, you know, it's difficult to oftentimes to really focus on the long term, like the climate crisis and, you know, all of our, everything that the earth needs from us. But we still need to do that. We still need to remember that this time will end. And when it does, we're going to want to have nature there for us. So so that's what we're doing. We're still going. We're still working.
Well, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I see one of the questions regarding how many people are here. We had over 650 RSVPs. So there's a lot of folks that are listening to our wonderful speakers and learning about these three critical movements. And I have a question for our youth climate strikers, and any one of you can chime in. And we'll just try to keep a quick responses, 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes. What is one thing, and you want the older generation to know about the climate movement? Obviously, you have some folks here, myself included, that are in older generations that are part of the movement, but there's a lot of folks that aren't or don't understand what the movement is about, especially from the perspective of youth. So what message would you want to send to the older generation to know about the climate movement?
I don't know who's jumping in here, but I would say that it's very important for the older folks who are wanting to get involved to recognize that this isn't just about, you know, a couple of trees. This is about the future of the entire planet. And whether or not you'll be there to see it, this is something that will affect every single person you've ever met. So this is really, really important for people my age. I know that most high schoolers are really terrified about this, really terrified about the climate crisis. I personally joined the movement because I was worried that I would wake up one day 10 years from now and realize that the world was ending and that I could have stopped it and I didn't do anything to do that. So that's what I would say. Lexi, Helen, do you have anything to add?
I would just say to join us on the streets, but now that it's not really the streets because of the pandemic, just join us in whatever forms of advocacy we do and any other forms of disruption, because I think email, letter campaigns are all super important, but we have to realize that this is what we've been doing for decades and it hasn't worked, and we need to change up our system. You know, we can't go by the same old rules anymore, and we have to find innovative ways to get the change we want, like the Green New Deal, because the climate crisis is not waiting for any of us.
You guys ended that perfectly. That was beautiful.
Well, thank you all for your advocacy. And certainly, you have a message to send. And it boggles my mind sometimes when people are like, well, I won't be around. Well, don't you care about your kids, your grandkids? And so I think that you physically being present and getting in people's faces, frankly, is part of what we need. So thank you. I have a question for Chairman Lopez. What lessons can we draw from indigenous communities regarding environmental protection?
Thank you, Member Kalra, and thank the person asking the question. A lot of people refer to Native Americans as hunters and gatherers. That couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. It's quite insulting, actually, when they refer to us that way. Our people, our creation story tells us that we are put here by Creator and given the directive to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. Tribes are the ones that have moral authority and a directive from Creator to take care of Mother Earth. And for throughout our history, 12, 14, 15,000 years and more, our people studied the environment, studied how to take care of migrating geese, migrating salmon, studied how to take care of the grizzly bear, the elk, etc. Study how all plants have to take care of an environment. That environment includes, or a community rather, includes, the plants must take care of fungi, insects, birds, four-legged, and people as well. Today, all those things that the knowledge of our ancestors just gone, and that's what's causing great destruction. We honestly believe that if we're going to recover and restore Mother Earth, the people, it must be indigenous led. And our tribe is working hard now to show that leadership and asking people to study and learn how our ancestors took care of Mother Earth. The most important thing about Mother Earth is relationships to the land and prayer and ceremony and recognizing that Mother Earth is sacred. And we all have a responsibility to restore that sacredness to the land. And that's how I would answer that.
No, thank you so much. About a year and a half ago, I had a chance to go up north to the largest tribe we have in California, the Yurok tribe. And they were in the process of working with the state to get rid of dams the state put in decades ago against the advice of the tribe. They realized the dams had done tremendous damage. And so now the tribe is helping to restore the habitat that was destroyed by the state of California. So it's an example that if we just listen to those that have actually been working with the land and the environment for hundreds of years, will benefit from that. And I think what you just said is a perfect example of that, Chairman Lopez. I do want to mention that Congressman McCloskey and Helen McCloskey want to remind everyone to vote, but I do have a question for them if they can hear us on the line about how April 22nd was chosen as the date for Earth Day. Was there any symbolism to it, or was it just a timing issue where they wanted to move quickly to wake up Congress at that time?
Very good question.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
How was April 22nd chosen, or April 20th for the first Earth Day?
Well, it's a wonderful thing. You have to go back to 1874 when a school teacher in Nebraska said, let's have an Arbor Day, and let's every kid in school plant a tree in the 6th grade or the 5th grade. And Arbor Day became a world thing. It's celebrated all over the country. It's April 22nd, and when Gaylord Nelson and I were talking about a date, Arbor Day seemed a great day. It also felt right in with a time when young people in colleges were out on vacation and thinking good thoughts about the environment. But I want to say one thing about the Indian or the Native American. The Native Americans took care of this country and its earth and its creatures better than we have. And I'm hoping, because the way you work with the environment these days is at the ballot box. If we can get the Navajos in Arizona to get involved, the Crow and the Blackfeet, it's a wonderful thing. These Native people are having pride again in being what they were, the great custodians of the environment. And I just want to welcome them back into the voting public and hope that they'll play a role next October, November.
Voting is one of the most important environmental actions any of us can take. And to the youth and the elders, I think one thing we have in common is we underutilize our power. And I'm encouraging the youth movement to really participate in the elections as well, because you guys could basically swing almost all of the elections that are going on, but still are underrepresented at the ballot box. So view that as just one tool of many in your toolbox, and please get out there and use it.
Your values are our values.
We share the values. We need to overturn the corruption that's happening.
Well, thank you both so much. You're both inspirational. You're both heroes. And there was a question, I think you just actually answered it, which is what advice do you have for younger folks, a part of the movement, and that's to vote. And we do know that younger people vote far less than other segments of our population. And so, yes, going into the street, being active, educating one another is important. But if we don't vote, we don't see the positive change that we're fighting for. I do want to make, I have one more question I want to ask, but I just want to make a note from Linda Hutchins-Knowles, and thank you to Mothers Out Front. But she did make a note about how youth, not just youth, but mothers and women being part of not just the initial Earth Day, but of the movement, certainly today in our environmental movement. And we want to really commend Mothers Out Front for everything that they have done and are doing for all of us. The last question I want to ask is of Megan. We have a couple folks in the Q&A have made mention of, I think in the moving statement that you read, talking about the virus being beneficial, there's someone else that wrote, is maybe the COVID-19, the Earth's response to all human activities in recent centuries. So whether it's literally or symbolically, Megan, what do you think the Earth is trying to tell us? What do you think the lesson is that we have to learn from this crisis that has been bestowed upon us in such a horrific way?
Yeah, I really appreciate, I'm sure I'm off mute, right? Cool.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that question. I hesitated on having any kind of message that talks about any silver lining of COVID-19. There's a lot of horrible suffering going on right now. But I think that the message of the suffering that is to come, that is in store for the human population 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, is what's happening now is nothing in comparison to that. And we have this moment in time right now, this pause, where we're having the chance, we're not buying as much. We're connecting with nature more. We are, this moment of, with our families, this moment of reflection, I think it really does give us the chance, and this perhaps might be our only chance, to the IPCC report that came out 2 years ago made it clear, and Jamie said this as well, that we have 10 years, till 2030 to basically fundamentally shift every sector of society for there to be a livable planet for the next generation and the next 7 generations. And the question when that report was put out wasn't, is this physically possible? The point was, yes, it's physically possible. We can actually take the action that's necessary for a livable planet. But the question that the IPCC report put out is it even humanly possible? Well, right now, this pause makes it clear that it is humanly possible. So that's the message that I was putting out and trying to get out there, eloquently or not. Hopefully that message rings true for some.
No, I think your point was excellent. And I think that speaking of the crisis we're going through, I know a couple comments have been made, and a lot of people, including some that have been part of the program, recognize the economic trauma that so many of our neighbors are going through. So as we talk about this movement, the environmental justice movement, let's remember that there are people suffering right now that can't feed themselves. And again, it's all connected, right? The day before the COVID crisis hit, we had injustice, both environmental and economic. This is exacerbating it. So let's make sure that we're taking care of our neighbors, and let's not forget them, and let's not forget the essential workers when this crisis is gone. They're still essential. The farm workers, the grocery store workers, the delivery workers, the janitors. And so we have to remember that, again, as Megan spoke to the interconnectedness in the beginning, that rings true today. And I want to just take a couple minutes and thank everybody that's joined us, especially our speakers. We have incredible people that have joined us as part of this movement. And we have 3 incredible calls to action of Juristock, Coyote Valley, and Cargill, all 3 of which I personally support and do whatever I can to show support. And I also want to, as part of the legislature, we have a lot of work going on that doesn't stop because of this crisis. I have a bill that targets tropical deforestation. I have a bill that will preserve 30% of our coastlines and our open spaces by 2030. These are all things that are still happening right now. I have a farm transition bill to help farms transition from animal-based to plant-based farming. And so the Green New Deal, as was mentioned by our youth, I'm a joint author of that. These are things that are happening here in California. And I think that, and I saw someone mention Citizens United, what have you, the reality is we may not be able to get money out of our politics anytime soon, given the politics of the Supreme Court and all that. But I will tell you this, and this applies, I don't care what party people are part of, the reality is money is playing way too much of an influence in our politics. The same polluters, the same financial institutions that finance projects like the Dakota Access Pipeline and mining projects, they are all contributing to political campaigns heavily. And so even though most elected officials say they believe in climate science and want to fight climate change, when push comes to shove, not enough of them are voting the right way, not enough of them are doing the right thing. So we have to hold everyone accountable, including me and every other elected official, when they're choosing the profiteers over fighting climate change. When they're choosing the polluters over the people, we have to call each and every one of them out, see who is contributing to their campaigns, and ensure that they're actually listening to the people, not the ones writing them checks. Because there are way more of us, there are way more of you than there are this small group of elite folks that want to keep things the way they are because they profit from it. And so I will end with that, with my little soapbox of a statement, and say that without organizations like Green Foothills, we would not be able to accomplish nearly a fraction of what we've been able to accomplish, whether it's in Coyote Valley, the fight for Cargill, joining with the Amah Mutsun and fighting for Juristak. That's just a small portion of what Green Foothills and partner organizations have done over the decades. And so I'm just grateful to be here and to be part of this movement, to be one small piece of what one person that's part of this army and soldier of folks that are going to fight to ensure that we save our earth, save our planet, in turn save ourselves, and do it in a way that uplifts everyone, that has economic justice in mind, that has racial justice in mind, gender equity in mind, but make sure that we always think about what impact we're having on our wildlife, our animals, and our planet. And so thank you all so much. I have, again, the pleasure of introducing someone who opened up our event. As I said, it's always important to have art and music as part of this movement to inspire us. So I'm gonna ask Chris Reed to once again inspire us with your beautiful voice and music, and let's send us out with joy, knowing that this movement is one that's ongoing, that we're gonna fight for many years to come. So thank you all so much for joining us. And Chris Reed, please send us off.
Thank you so much. Hello, all you beautiful people. Happy Earth Day. Grow your own garden and love what you get, 'cause the fruits of your labor are hard to forget. With hands in the soil and heart everywhere, 'cause the water pours down, the message is clear. And we say, it's true, all the love we have, it comes from you. Tools the ground, the lightning will lead as sweat drips of truth, not easily seen, hung from the branches amongst the trees. Emotions are felt, yet not easily seen. And we say, it's true, all the love we have, it comes from you. And we say, it's true, all the love we have, it comes from you. All the love we have, it is so true. Your sacrifice shines brighter than the moon every day. You carry me, leaves begin to fall and winter comes before the summer's gone. Confusion's knocking on nature's door. Please forgive me, forgive us, Lord, for what have we done and how could we have taken it for granted and forsaken the lands. Shame falls on our desecration of man, but who are we to understand? Yeah, yeah. And we say it's true, all the love we have, it comes from you. And we say it's true, all the love we have, it comes from you. Happy Earth Day.
Happy, I'm like, got very emotional towards the end of that. Thank you all for being a part of this beautiful Earth Day. I love seeing all of the comments. There were a lot of questions about how to take action. Where did that writing, the poem I read come from? People want to buy Chris's album. We'll gather all of those answers to those questions and send them out in an email afterwards. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I hope that this lifted your spirits. There's a lot of work ahead, but we can do it together. So thank you. Love you guys.